What dog can tell time? A watchdog. What time is it when your watchdog lets a robber pet him and doesn't bark? Time to get a new watchdog. Why did Bob Dylan adjust all the clocks? Tim? Because the times they are a-changin'. Time. It's something that people like to make jokes about, even if they're corny. But it's also something that people take very seriously and define in many different ways. Time is money, said Ben Franklin. Time is an illusion, said Albert Einstein. Time is the wisest counselor of all, said Pericles. Harvey Mackay said, time is free, but it's priceless. You can't own it, but you can use it. You can't keep it, but you can spend it. Once you've lost it, you can never get it back. What is your relationship with time? Are you worried and hurried, always trying to be on time? Are you having to do things that seem to be a waste of time? Do you have too much time on your hands? Are you aware at your age or medical condition that your time is coming soon? I had time this past summer on my sabbatical vacation leave, 3 months, more than I've ever had time off from work in my life. It was a gift. It was glorious. It was a blessing. But if I have to be honest, I would say, I wish I would have had a little more time, because time flies, right? But I learned this valuable lesson on my sabbatical that I wanted to share with you. As I have been going through the different lessons, the parts of a story, we talked about the who, the characters, and I invited you to love your people. And then the what, the purpose or plot of your life, and that is to live your purpose. And then last week I talked about the setting or the place, and we talked about sanctuary, how important that is, inviting you to locate your place and live in it. And then finally today, I want to talk about time, and I want to invite you to lengthen your time. So lengthen means to extend, to prolong, protract, to draw out or add to so as to increase its length. But I know it sounds like an oxymoron to say lengthen your time, because time is finite, right? It's limited. 24 hours in a day, that's all we get. And as the psalmist witnesses in Psalm 90, the days of our life are 70 years or perhaps 80 if we are strong. Or in the case of Rayanne's father, who recently died, 91 years. That's a long time. But still, all of us at one time, our life will come to an end. Well, some people give us prescriptions of how to extend our lifetime. And that's good, because if we take care of ourselves, then we can live healthy, enjoyable lives for as much time as we have on this earth. But we've all lived long enough to know that even if we take good care of ourselves, sometimes we get sick. And even if we do all that we can to live well and keep the faith, sometimes life's challenges simply overwhelm us. Yeah, just like that. Thank you, Rowan. That was perfect. And as we heard in the psalm that Michael read, the psalmist cries out, "I cry aloud in the day of my trouble. I seek the Lord. My soul refuses to be comforted." Sound familiar? No matter how much faith we have, I can imagine that you've had some nights where you've laid in bed, unable to sleep, tossing and turning, thinking about your troubles, worrying about your worries, whispering questions in the dark that only God can hear. Questions like the psalmist raises: has God's steadfast love ceased? Has God forgotten to be gracious? And as the Message translates it, is God's love worn threadbare? Has God angrily stomped off and left us? Just my luck, God retires just the moment I need him. Have you ever secretly wondered that? Or maybe even had the courage to speak it out loud? These are some of the questions I heard this week from someone who has been struggling with so many health challenges. And so as he was sharing this, he said, "I'm at the end of my rope," and he admitted to praying, "God, we can't take any more." In that moment, I knew not to try to respond. Certainly not to try to defend God. But I listened. I just gave him some time and space to let it out. Let out his anger. Let out his pain, his fear. And as he was talking, I was breathing and silent. And I was silently saying to myself, "Selah. Selah, Selah." Selah is the word that appears in the margins of this psalm today that Michael read, and in many other psalms. And it has, as he indicated, scholars aren't really sure what this word means. It's a Hebrew word that is not easily translatable. So some say it was when the Psalms were sung, and it told the choir master to have the choir stop singing for a moment. Other scholars think it means that when you're reading it, that is the right time that you should just stop. Take a break, take a breath, pause for contemplation and prayer. This seeks to lengthen, to extend, prolong, protract, to draw out or add to, so to increase its length of time before we respond. The word selah gives us an opportunity to take a moment out of our busy, nonstop, crazy, confounding life and just be still for a moment. And consider that God's ways are often higher than our ways and different than our thoughts. To take a moment to realize that we don't understand all the ways of God, at least on this side of heaven. So when we take a moment just to breathe and pause for contemplation and prayer, sometimes it's just long enough for us to shift from our short-term feelings to our long-term faith. To turn from ranting our frustrations to remembering God's promises to be with us always. And in that time when we pause, sometimes we can feel a change come over us. And that's what happens in the psalm. Right after the selah is said in Psalm 77, we hear a different tone. He says, "Your way, O God, is holy. You are the God who works wonders. With your strong arm, you redeemed your people. Selah." Now, you don't need to have a sabbatical to practice selah. You can do it any place, at any time, especially the time when you need it most. The woman in the gospel lesson for today needed it most. She was bent over for 18 long years. Can you imagine that? Her face was pointed to the ground, and so she couldn't see the sky or the sun or other people's faces smile. Surely she was suffering in body, mind, and spirit. When Jesus saw her, he had compassion on her and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." And he touched her. And immediately she stood up straight. Her body was lengthened and her spirit was liberated. And she began to praise God. It was a miracle. It was an answer to prayer. It was a celebration. It was a thanksgiving. But not for everyone. The synagogue leader was indignant, quoting the law to keep the Sabbath. Now, Sabbath keeping was something that set Jews apart. There wasn't another religion that kept a day apart for rest. And so it was unique, but by Jesus' time, there are many different understandings of exactly what this meant, and rabbis like to argue about it. What could you do or not do on the Sabbath? What constituted work, what didn't? Can you light the fire to cook? Can you feed your animals? Most considered it lawful to take care of your animals and to rescue them if they were in trouble or pain. And so, Jesus said, "So ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" Sadly, the people have forgotten that Sabbath was a gift given to them by God. The Hebrew word for Sabbath is Shabbat, and it simply means, it's a verb that simply means stop. Stop and rest. And so Luther Seminary Old Testament professor Catherine Schifferdecker reminds us, the world will continue to turn without you. Let me say that again. The world will continue to turn without you. God is God, and you are not. The world does not depend on your busyness, so just stop. Let others rest too. Remember how it was to work without rest? Well, then don't do that to another human being. Shabbat, selah. Take a moment, take a rest, take a break, take a breath, pause to contemplate and to pray. When we do, we are then better able to glimpse God's grace, to feel God's love, and to know God's will is for good, that all should enjoy an abundant life and be set free from anything that burdens them in body, mind, or spirit. So what are you burdened with today? What weighs you down? What makes you weary? What makes you unable to lift your eyes to see the sky and the sun and the smiles of people around you? What stops you from being able to stand up straight and praise God? Sabbath, selah. Take a break, a breath, a pause for contemplation and prayer. For when we do, we will get a new perspective on the gifts and graces and the length of time. The future is something which everyone reaches at the rate of 60 minutes an hour. Whatever he does, whoever he is, writes C.S. Lewis. Time stays long enough for anyone who will use it, writes Leonardo da Vinci. At the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, or not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with a husband, a friend, a child, a parent, a loved one, writes Barbara Bush. And of course, the prophet in Ecclesiastes says, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak." God has made everything suitable for its time. Friends, time is a gift from God to be lived and loved, and to be whoever God created us to be. Sabbath is a gift to stop and rest. Selah is a gift to stop, take a break, take a breath, a pause for contemplation and prayer. A gift, a lesson that I bring to you from my sabbatical is lengthen your time. How do we do that? Make the most of it. Give thanks for it. One day at a time, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. Selah, selah, selah.